The Callahans were a typical suburban family living in the quiet town of Redding, California. David Callahan was a high school history teacher, a man who loved classic cars, maps, and the idea of the open road. His wife, Erin, was a freelance photographer and devoted mother, the kind who always carried her camera bag wherever she went. They had 2 children, Lucas, 10, curious and adventurous, and Mia, 7, who never went anywhere without her yellow stuffed rabbit named Sunny. Before we begin today's story, if you're new here, welcome. If you love real-life mysteries and unsolved disappearances, then take a second to support the channel. Like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. What you're about to hear is one of the most chilling family disappearances in modern American history, a case that haunted investigators for years. A young family set out on a summer road trip in the year 2000. They were seen leaving their home in Northern California, but they never reached their destination. 4 years later, a lost camera was found buried in the desert, its film still intact, and what it revealed was something no one was prepared to see. This is the story of the Callahan family. On the morning of July 14, 2000, David loaded their old blue Ford Windstar van with camping gear, snacks, and a fold-up tent. Their plan was to drive from Redding to Monument Valley, then onward to the Grand Canyon before heading home a week later. Erin recorded everything with her camcorder. The footage, later recovered, showed the family laughing, packing the van, and waving goodbye to neighbors. The timestamp, 7:42 a.m., July 14th. It would be the last verified sighting of the Callahans alive. The Callahans' route took them through long stretches of highway, past Lassen Volcanic Park, through Nevada's endless desert plains. David was meticulous with maps. He kept a paper atlas in the glove compartment, refusing to rely on those unreliable new GPS devices of the era. Around 8:30 p.m., they checked into a small roadside motel outside Tonopah, Nevada. The manager, an elderly woman named Beatrice Gomez, later told police that the family seemed cheerful, tired but happy. They asked for directions to an old scenic route, Highway 267, a lesser-known backroad that connected Tonopah to the eastern edge of Death Valley. The next morning, July 15th, they checked out just before dawn. Erin recorded a short clip in the motel parking lot. In the shaky footage, David joked, "If we get lost out there, at least we've got a camera to document it." Erin laughed, telling him, "Just keep the kids away from the snakes." That tape ended abruptly, the frame freezing on the image of the rising sun reflecting off their windshield. When the Callahans failed to return home by July 20th, David's brother, Mark Callahan, filed a missing person report. Search efforts began immediately. State troopers, park rangers, and local volunteers scoured Highway 267 and nearby trails. They found tire impressions matching the van, a single discarded juice box, and 2 miles off the main road, what appeared to be a torn map fluttering in the wind. But there was no sign of the family or the van. Over the next weeks, the desert heat reached 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Helicopters flew over vast canyons and dry riverbeds. Nothing. No footprints. No clothing. No personal belongings. The case soon went cold, another name added to the growing list of disappearances in the Nevada-Arizona borderlands. Months passed, and rumors grew. Truckers reported seeing a blue van parked near the abandoned mining town of Goldstrike, but by the time deputies arrived, it was gone. One prospector claimed he'd seen strange light flashes in the desert at night, like camera flashes, he said. Others swore the family had run out of gas and been stranded, victims of dehydration. A few darker theories emerged: robbery, foul play, even a cult operating in the area. But none of those theories had proof. Then, in August 2004, 4 years after the Callahans' disappearance, something surfaced, literally. A flash flood swept through a dry gulch near Amargosa Valley, unearthing debris buried beneath layers of sand. Among the items recovered was a black Nikon Coolpix camera, wrapped in a torn flannel shirt. Inside was a roll of 35mm film, remarkably, still intact. The camera was sent to a state forensic lab in Carson City for examination. Technicians carefully extracted the film and began developing the photos. The images were grainy but clear enough to make out faces. The first few pictures were normal, the Callahans posing at a gas station, Erin taking photos of desert flowers, Lucas holding a map upside down, pretending to navigate. But as the roll progressed, the photos changed. The lighting grew dimmer. The angles became erratic. One showed David staring into the horizon, his face tense, worried. Another showed a strange set of tracks behind the van, deep tire marks veering off the dirt road into a narrow canyon. The final photo was the most disturbing. It showed the family's van parked in front of what appeared to be an abandoned mine entrance, the wooden beams partially collapsed. Erin's handwriting was later found on the back of the printed copy. "We think we found something, we'll check it out." That note was dated July 15, 2000, 6:22 p.m. Detective Laura Niles, a state investigator who had worked the original missing person case, was called back when the camera surfaced. She had spent years haunted by the Callahans' disappearance. Now, the discovery reignited her determination. Niles drove to the last known coordinates of the photos. The landscape had changed. The mine entrance was half buried after years of erosion. Local rangers told her the area was once part of a private mining lease that had been shut down in 1989 following several fatal collapses. No one was supposed to be there. Inside the mine entrance, investigators found rusted cans, a collapsed wooden cart, and fragments of blue paint, the same color as the Callahans' van. But there was no van. And no human remains. 24 years have passed since the Callahans vanished. The lost camera was the first piece of evidence to surface, but it raised more questions than answers. What did they find inside that mine? Why did the van disappear without a trace? And why did the final photo on that camera look as if someone, or something, was standing behind them? In September of 2004, Detective Laura Niles and her small investigative team arrived at the site where the lost camera was found. It was an unforgiving stretch of desert, jagged rock, salt flats, and heat mirages twisting across the horizon. Local authorities had long considered the case dormant, but the recovered camera reignited media interest. The Callahan disappearance was back in the headlines. When Niles arrived, she set up camp near the gulch, marking out a perimeter with survey flags. It was there that she found something strange, a set of footprints, faint but visible in the hardened mud, leading away from the mine entrance. There were 3 sets, not 4, and the stride pattern suggested one was dragging something heavy. Among the evidence retrieved from the area was an old voice recorder, found near a collapsed section of rock inside the mine. It was a small handheld model, covered in dust and corrosion. When forensic technicians restored it, they found one surviving recording. The timestamp read July 15, 2000, 9:13 p.m. A woman's voice, Erin Callahan, spoke softly through static. "We're in the tunnel now. David says it's just old mining equipment. The air feels strange, it's colder in here. Lucas keeps hearing something. I think we should go back. Oh God, wait." Then silence. A soft clicking sound, like metal scraping against stone. Then the tape ended. Using the photo timestamps from the camera, Niles estimated that the Callahans entered the mine sometime between 6:30 and 7 p.m. By 9 o'clock, the temperature would have dropped, and light would have been scarce. The mine shaft extended nearly 3/4 of a mile underground. It twisted into several chambers before narrowing into a dead end. Cave-ins had been reported there before, entire walls of sediment prone to collapse after heavy rain. Niles' team spent hours mapping the tunnels with ground-penetrating radar. On the second day, they found something, a buried cavity about 30 feet beneath the surface, sealed under compacted sandstone. When they dug in, the stench hit first, stale air trapped for years. Inside the cavity were personal belongings. A small red backpack, a rusted thermos, a melted disposable flashlight, and a stuffed yellow rabbit, flattened, its fabric half disintegrated. Niles paused. She knew it instantly. It was Mia's toy, the one Erin had filmed in their final home video. Despite the new findings, there was still no trace of the van itself. Then, in 2005, a group of hikers exploring a dried-out basin near Panamint Valley stumbled upon something eerie, a large dented object half buried in silt. When investigators arrived, they discovered the front half of a Ford Windstar, the same make, color, and model registered to David Callahan. The vehicle had been severed cleanly in two, the rear section missing entirely. No human remains were found inside. The windshield was shattered inward, as if something massive had struck from above. A melted camera tripod was found in the front passenger seat, fused by intense heat. The van's dashboard clock had stopped at 9:17 p.m., just 4 minutes after Erin's final recording. In 2024, 2 decades later, digital forensic experts revisited the original 35mm negatives from the Callahan's lost camera using advanced restoration. To their shock, they discovered that one final frame had never been fully developed. When enhanced, the image revealed what appeared to be the entrance of the mine, dimly lit by headlights. In the lower left corner of the frame, a faint silhouette stood, humanoid, but distorted, as if the shape was doubled, blurred, almost vibrating. Some claimed it was a photographic glitch caused by motion blur. Others swore it looked like a figure watching from the darkness, its outline unnaturally tall. Erin's handwriting appeared again on the back of that photo. "Something's moving. It's not the wind." Detective Niles retired from law enforcement in 2009, but the Callahan case stayed with her. She often described dreaming of the mine, waking up convinced she could hear a woman's voice echoing faintly from underground. In 2016, during a recorded interview for a local documentary, Niles said, "I've seen a lot of things in that desert. People disappear there all the time. But the Callahans, it wasn't dehydration. It wasn't bandits. There was something else in that mine. And I don't think it ever wanted to be found." The interviewer asked her what she meant. Niles just stared into the camera for several seconds, then whispered, "It wasn't a place for the living." After the documentary aired, several amateur explorers attempted to locate the Callahan mine. Most returned with nothing but sunburn and exhaustion. But one man, a YouTuber known as Desert Hunter 92, uploaded a short video in early 2021 claiming to have found the real Callahan site. In the video, he filmed what looked like a collapsed tunnel. For less than 3 seconds, the camera captured a blue metallic reflection beneath the rubble, the same shade as the Callahan van. Before he could explore further, his flashlight flickered out. When the light returned, the tunnel behind him appeared partially sealed, as if the earth itself had shifted. The man sprinted back to daylight, breathing heavily, muttering, "I heard something down there. Like voices." A week later, the video vanished from his channel. His account was deleted without explanation. 24 years after the Callahan's disappearance, the truth still lies buried beneath the desert. The camera told part of their story, the mine, the final moments, and the unspoken terror in their photos. But one question remains unanswered. If the mine collapsed the night they vanished, who developed that final roll of film? In early 2024, a private data recovery specialist named Tomas Herrera was contracted to re-examine all the digital archives related to the Callahan investigation. He wasn't a cop. He was a civilian hired by a retired state investigator who believed the truth had been overlooked. When Herrera reviewed the audio tapes, he noticed something strange about Erin Callahan's final recording, the one captured inside the mine at 9:13 p.m. Through advanced frequency mapping, he discovered two overlapping voices. The first was clearly Erin's. The second was faint, low, and distorted. When isolated and enhanced, the voice seemed to say, "Turn back. They don't belong here." But the spectral pattern of the voice didn't match any human tone. It fluctuated at frequencies too low for typical speech, almost mechanical. Herrera sent his findings to the Nevada State Archives. A week later, he received an anonymous email reply. The subject line read, "Stop analyzing the audio." No sender, no signature. For years, amateur radio operators had reported odd transmissions around channel 5.2 MHz, an abandoned shortwave frequency that overlapped with the coordinates of the mine site. One night in October 2024, a hobbyist named Greg Nolan, broadcasting from Reno, captured something chilling on his scanner. "This is Callahan. Please respond. It's dark. They won't let us leave." The voice was weak, trembling, a man's voice. Nolan assumed it was a prank. But when he replayed the recording, the static contained background interference, a faint sound resembling children crying. The transmission repeated 3 times that night, each version degrading in clarity, until the signal vanished completely. When Nolan reported it to authorities, his footage was seized for investigation. 2 weeks later, his YouTube channel and radio logs were deleted. While analyzing case archives, Herrera discovered something buried deep in the records, a report from 1998, 2 years before the Callahans vanished. It described another family, the Duvalls, who disappeared along a nearly identical stretch of highway while traveling from Arizona to Nevada. Their case was never connected to the Callahans because of jurisdictional overlap. But the similarities were uncanny. A family of 4. A blue minivan. Last contact near Goldstrike Ridge. A missing camera. Only one clue was ever found from the Duval case, a half-burned photograph of an open mine entrance. The background was nearly identical to the one found in the Callahans' final photo. In November 2024, an anonymous package arrived at the Redding Police Department. Inside was a small leather-bound notebook, scorched at the edges, pages water-damaged but partially legible. The handwriting matched David Callahan's. The first page read, "We lost the road. Heading north again. Found something in the rocks, like a passage. Erin thinks it's old. Lucas keeps saying he hears people." A later entry. "No service. Van overheating. Erin says she saw someone outside. I think she's imagining it. If anyone finds this, stay away from the mine." The final page contained only 2 words, written hastily in thick ink. "Not alone." The ink had bled down the page, mixed with what appeared to be dried blood. After the journal's discovery, state officials closed access to the Amargosa Valley area again. But late in December 2024, a geological research team conducting surveys for seismic data captured unusual thermal readings near the old mine coordinates. Heat signatures, deep underground, consistent, rhythmic, almost like movement. When they returned weeks later, the readings had stopped. But in the sand above the site, they found fresh tire tracks, not from their vehicles. The tread pattern matched a Ford Windstar, a model discontinued in 2003. In early 2025, a tourist hiking along a dry ridge 2 miles north of the mine stumbled upon something odd: a small yellow plush rabbit, its button eyes intact, fabric faded but unmistakable. Forensics later confirmed the thread dye matched the same unique pigment as the toy recovered in 2004. How could it have resurfaced nearly 2 decades later, miles from the sealed site? When investigators analyzed the fibers, they found microscopic traces of salt and rust, suggesting the toy had been underwater. But there are no lakes or rivers within 20 miles of that area. The report was quietly sealed under archival confidentiality. Freelance reporter Megan Stokes decided to investigate the case in early 2025 for a documentary project. She retraced the Callahan's route, interviewing locals who remembered the family's stop in Tonopah. One motel worker recalled something unusual. "That lady, the mom, she asked me if anyone else had been through with kids that week. Said she had a weird dream about another family waving at her from the desert." When Megan showed the worker the photo of the Duvall family from 1998, the woman's face went pale. "That's them," she whispered. That's who she described. But the Duvalls had disappeared 2 years before Erin and her family even left home. The Callahan case was never about a single disappearance. It was part of something larger, a pattern stretching across decades, tied to a single forgotten place in the Nevada desert. 2 families, 2 cameras, 1 mine, and a voice that keeps calling out, long after everyone stopped listening. In January 2025, the State Archives approved a final forensic restoration of the original Callahan footage. Using spectral scanning, technicians recovered several frames that had been deemed too damaged to view. The new images were horrifying. The footage began with the family inside the mine. Erin's voice could be heard faintly, calm, reassuring the children that it was just an adventure. The beam of a flashlight danced across wooden beams, old rail tracks, and abandoned tools covered in dust. Then came a low rumble. Dust fell from the ceiling. David's voice. "We need to go now." The camera shifted. Erin turned toward the entrance, and for a fraction of a second, the light caught a shape at the far end of the tunnel. Not human. Tall, narrow, with arms that seemed to bend backward. Then the image flickered, distorted, as if the film itself resisted being seen. The next frames were chaos, shouting, running, the sound of metal collapsing. The final seconds showed Erin's face illuminated by the flashlight. She wasn't screaming. She was whispering. "It's not letting us out." Then darkness. Investigators noticed something unsettling in the restored frames. A reflective surface, like a license plate, appeared briefly behind the Callahans in one shot. When the numbers were enhanced, the partial tag read DV02. That was the Duvall family's registration number from 1998. Experts proposed a theory. The mine where both families vanished might not have been a single tunnel, but a network of collapsed shafts connecting several abandoned sites across the desert. When flash floods swept through the area over the years, debris, and perhaps remains, could have shifted miles apart, explaining why the Callahan van was found separated from the mine. But that didn't explain the voices, or the shadowed figure seen in multiple photos. In late 2025, Tomas Herrera returned to the case for one final analysis. He compared the background frequencies from Erin's tape to geological data recorded near Amargosa Valley. The match was uncanny. The voice frequency aligned with deep subsonic tremors, the kind produced by underground gas vents. Herrera theorized that the mine emitted periodic low-frequency vibrations that could distort sound and even induce auditory hallucinations. To skeptics, it was the perfect rational explanation. The Callahans were lost, dehydrated, frightened. They followed echoes into the mine, mistaking them for voices. When the structure collapsed, Their camera and belongings were scattered by erosion. It made sense, except for one detail. Those tremors hadn't been active since 1996. The recordings from 2000 couldn't have matched that frequency. On March 18, 2025, the lab released one last restored audio fragment from the camera's microphone. It lasted less than 4 seconds. A child's voice, Mia's, whispered through static. "Mom, he's back." Then silence. No other voice followed. Just the faint hiss of wind echoing through stone. That spring, Detective Niles, now 71, returned to Amargosa one final time. She brought with her the Callahan journal and a single printed photo of the family smiling at the gas station before their trip. Standing before the sealed mine, she placed the photo in the sand and whispered, "You can rest now." As she turned to leave, a gust of wind lifted the dust, and for an instant the air shimmered, revealing a faint outline in the sunlight. 4 figures, blurred, distant, standing at the edge of the ridge. When she blinked, they were gone. Later, she described the moment in her private notes. "Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was something else. But for once, I felt they weren't trapped anymore." In the archives, Herrera continued studying the negatives long after the official case was closed. One evening, he noticed that the strip of film contained an extra frame between the known shots, a frame that hadn't been logged. When magnified, it showed the Callahan van parked under moonlight, doors open, headlights still glowing. A second vehicle sat behind it, half obscured by dust. Its license plate read Duval 1998. But the strangest detail wasn't the cars, it was the horizon. Both vehicles appeared to be facing each other in opposite directions, as if photographed in 2 different moments in time merged into one image. The timestamp read, July 15, 2000, 9:17 p.m. The same minute the van's dashboard clock had stopped. Months later, when Herrera attempted to retrieve the physical negatives for archival display, they were gone. The storage box was found empty, the sign-out sheet blank. Security footage from the archive showed no one entering the storage room that night, yet the motion sensors recorded movement between 2 o'clock and 2:04 a.m. A faint click, like a camera shutter, was heard over the internal mic. When the staff reviewed the hallway footage, one frame briefly glitched. In that single corrupted frame, the reflection of a blue van appeared in the glass door, headlights on. It's now been 25 years since the Callahan family disappeared. Their remains were never found. Their story became legend, part cautionary tale, part ghost story whispered by travelers who drive the desert highways at night. Some claim that on still evenings, near the old mine road, you can hear faint laughter carried on the wind. Others say they've seen the glow of headlights in the distance, flickering once, then vanishing, as if a family were still trying to find their way home. And every so often, rangers discover new tire tracks in the sand. The same tread pattern from a 2000 Ford Windstar. 4 years, people searched for a logical explanation. But the truth is simpler and sadder. The desert keeps what it wants. The Callahan story reminds us how fragile we are against nature, against time, and against the places the world has already forgotten. If you followed this story to the end, thank you. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next true mystery. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, some roads are better left untraveled.